I'm a runner, so I run a lot. For me, like a normal day is running like 5.5 to 6 miles. Today, I PR'd in the mile. I got a 5:35. At the height of my cross country season, I was running 50 miles a week. I've run 12 miles in a row, and 4 miles is an easy day for me. I've normalized all these amazing running achievements because I've surrounded myself with a bunch of people who also consider it the norm. And I'm not saying all this just to brag. I have a point, and you'll figure it out, or I'll tell you more about it a little bit later. But a few weeks ago, a girl in my small group brought up the question and got me curious about Jesus' crucifixion. And she asked why he's so special. Like, and I'm sure many of you would agree, if you knew you were going to die, wouldn't you want to die for a bunch of people too? Like, wouldn't you rather die knowing that you could save them and you could like help bring them, or you could bring them salvation? Like, it seems like a no-brainer. But I don't think we really understand what happened to Jesus in his crucifixion. You might be wondering, what does this have anything to do with you like running? And it's the same idea. We in the church have normalized Jesus' crucifixion. We've just kind of made it a part of like our everyday language. Like, Jesus died for you. He loves you. But like, do you really understand what the crucifixion is? Do you really understand what Jesus went through? In Mark 15, 1 through 14, it kind of talks about how Jesus went on trial before Pilate. Pilate found him innocent, but then he brought him out to the crowd, and the crowd was like, no, crucify him, we don't like him. And so then Barabbas was released to the crowd, and Jesus was forced to be crucified. And so I'm going to pick it up in Mark 15:15. But then, wanting to satisfy the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. The soldiers led Jesus away into the palace, that is, the praetorium, and called together the whole company of soldiers. They put a purple robe on him and twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on him. They began to call out to him, Hail the King of the Jews! Again and again they struck him on the head with the staff and spit on him. Falling on their knees, they paid homage to him. And when they had mocked him, they took off his purple robe and put his own clothes back on them. Then they led him away to be crucified. A certain man from Cyrene, Simon the father of Alexander and Rufus, was passing by on his way from the country, and they forced him to carry the cross. They brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. There they offered him wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it, and they crucified him. Dividing up his clothes, they cast lots to see what each would get. It was 9 a.m. when they crucified him. The written notice of the charge against him read, the King of the Jews. They crucified 2 rebels with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads, saying, So, you who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, come down from the cross and save yourself. In the same way, the chief priests and teachers of the law mocked him among themselves. He saved others, they said, but he can't save himself. Let this Messiah, the King of Israel, come down from the cross, that we may see and believe. Those crucified with him also heaped insults on him. At noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. At 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of those standing near heard this, they said, Listen, he's calling Elijah. Someone ran, filled a sponge with wine vinegar, put it on a staff, and offered it to Jesus to drink. Now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to take him down, he said. With a loud cry, Jesus breathed out his last. So I'm going to go step by step and kind of walk you through what Jesus' crucifixion, the process of basically him being tortured, was really like. And the point of the crucifixion, it wasn't a popular way to die. It was actually, the Roman citizens were basically exempt from crucifixion. Like, if they committed a crime. The crucifixion was so awful that Rome didn't feel comfortable letting their own citizens have this punishment. It was designed to extract as much pain out of the condemned before their eventual and unavoidable death. So Jesus was whipped, obviously. He was whipped by 2 guards with a whip made of multiple strands of leather, with small iron balls and bits of sharp bone at the end of each strand. The iron balls would cause painful bruises, and the leather and bone would cut into the skin to the point where ribbons of bleeding flesh came out of his back. Two men had to take turns whipping him. That means one was whipping him so hard that he got tired, so another man had to step in and whip him until he got tired, and they took turns whipping him until they were tired. The point of whipping the point of flagellation was to weaken the accused to the point of almost to the point of death. They're on the brink of death, and they're so at this point Jesus is already dehydrated, he's starving, he's sleep deprived, and he's a bloodied mess. His back, you can't even tell it's his back anymore. And then after that he was taunted and humiliated. He had a crown of thorns not just gently placed on his head as we kind of picture, but forced into his head so it stuck. More mental abuse followed by being spit on and insulted and verbally abused. Then he was forced to carry his own cross, or at least the crossbar, which was still like 75 plus pounds, until he collapsed. Now this could have been like 10, 15, 20 yards, or it could have been a few hundred yards. Nonetheless, if you are almost dead and you're trying to carry 75 pounds on your back, making any sort of distance is insane. Like, we kind of think like, oh, like he didn't have to go that far, but still going any sort of distance and being such excruciating pain it's amazing. I'm in awe. And then finally, when he gets to Golgotha, he's nailed to a cross, and iron nails were driven through his wrists, and one long one was driven through both of his feet. And the Romans have gotten so good at crucifixion, they knew where to put the nails so it didn't puncture a major artery. So basically, his arms are going into shock, and he's not going to bleed to death. Actually, he's probably going to die from suffocation, shock, or heart failure, because that's how most people died when they were when they were crucified. Because you have to push up on your feet to exhale, but your feet are nailed to a cross. So as you try to breathe out, your skinless back rubs against splintered wood. This would both be tiring and excruciating for someone who is already on the brink of death. At some point, they just choose that it's not worth it to breathe anymore, and they die. Often Roman soldiers, if they were too tired of waiting around for these people to die, they would just break the legs of those on the cross so they couldn't breathe anymore, because they can't push up on broken legs. And then probably the most incredible thing Jesus did, he took the cup we could not bear. He took on the wrath of God. He took on all of this physical pain, and then he took on the wrath of God and died for you. He didn't just do it just to do it, because if he wanted to, he could have gone off the cross and saved himself. Jesus was fully God. He had the power to do that, but instead he chose to go through all of that and to die for you. I'm going to go back to this idea I brought up earlier of, if I'm going to die, I guess I'll do it for everybody, right? I could never do this for everybody, and I doubt I could do it for really anybody. And especially not for everybody, because in the entire world, there are murderers, there are rapists, there are thieves, and people who assault other people. There are some awful people out there, and I could never die knowing that because of me, they could possibly get something that they definitely don't deserve. And I could never do this knowing how many people didn't actually believe I did it, and how many people wouldn't ever hear about, and how many people would hear about it and wouldn't care. Like, to me, I could never do that, but I'm not God. Jesus was God, and he did. He performed this ultimate act of love, and then he backed it up by the ultimate act of power of raising himself from the dead after all of that. So what does this gruesome information do? I didn't just say all this to make you feel bad, like, oh gosh, like, wow, like, that's kind of crazy. No. There's purpose behind us. This, like, knowing this information gives us better perspective of God's great love for us. It shows us what real love is, and it makes us want to love others, because if Jesus could do that for us, me, an imperfect human being, then I can love other imperfect human beings. It makes us want to serve him more, because when we know what he did for us, the simple things seem easier to do for him. It gives us more respect for Jesus, because Jesus already has earned our highest respect. But when you really understand what he did for you, it's easier to give him that respect. And it tells us what our salvation really cost. It tells us what our salvation cost. It tells us what our worth is. Because if Jesus was willing to go through all of that for you, you must mean a whole lot to him. I hope you learned something from this research that I did, and I hope that this information will really transform your perspective and really change your life. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, night, evening, afternoon, morning, whatever, whenever you're watching this. Don't forget how much Jesus loves you. Bye.